Sometimes you'll have a PDF that you want to create from scratch that you will scan from a book at home or something. In order to make that as accessible as possible for students, there's a couple of things that we have to do in the process of processing that PDF to make sure that it's okay to post for Canvas or for your students to use. So I've just opened a scan here, so I went through the scanner, saved the file, and this is what it spat out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to edit the PDF, and I'm opening this in Adobe Acrobat Pro once again, and it's actually going to run through this document really quickly and make sure that the text is selectable. So now you'll see a bunch of boxes that show that this text is selectable, so I can copy and paste this into something or students can read it. So on a basic level, this is now at least somewhat readable or somewhat usable for students. But there's still a lot of problems with this document, and we're going to talk about some of those problems as we're going through. It's going to do that a little bit as I scroll down through the pages too. We're going to run a full text scan for the entire document, but the first thing you want to do is you want to crop this image, because I've got some weird edges on the pages and I've got the book edge showing. So sometimes Adobe will think that this is an image. So right now it thinks this top border is an image when it really isn't important to the document and we don't really need it. So if I crop the pages, all I have to do is just make a box and double click that box. I like to do this because that way you have a little more control over what you're seeing. When you set to 0, it changes the crop box so that you can then really carefully control how far down you want to cut the page. So I'd like to cut it about right there. And then I go to the left and I want to cut it about right there where the page number is. And then from the bottom, I pull that up so it's right about here. And then the right side, I'm just going to cut until it's, as clean as it can be. Obviously, you can redo scans and make that page a little bit better, but at the same time, that's a basic way of working with it. And then as I'm cutting this, all I need to do is hit enter. I could actually do this for multiple pages in the document, so I could make those same proportions for every single page in the document. So I could put from page 1 to page 13 here, and it would cut every page that way. It'll also give you an option to do even or odd pages. So sometimes when you flip the book back and forth, you might have all the even pages are like this and all the odd pages are like this. So it'll help you to crop those as well. But I'm just going to crop it just to show you as an example. So now the only thing that we're looking at is actually the text on the page, and we don't have to worry about all of that stuff on the side being an issue. So now that I've cropped the page, and you would want to do this for all of the pages in the document, and I'll show you a couple of things that you'll see as you do that. But if I go down now to the action wizard, it's customize action wizard. We're just going to skip a lot of steps and just go straight to the make accessible wizard. It's going to help run us through this whole process. If I hit start, then we've got a couple of problems here with accessibility from the start. We don't have a title, we don't have a subject, we don't have an author, and we don't have any keywords. Sometimes you can just leave as is and that's okay, but in this case you would actually want to go through and do the title of the piece, so game design, blah, 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 and you'd want to have the subject, you'd want to have the author, all of those things. So rather than fill those in with you now, we're just going to keep moving. Document language is in English, I know that. And then downsample to 600 dpi, just leave it there. Don't ever mess with this because you want that to be as high quality as possible. When I hit OK, all it's doing is just running through and making sure that it's scanning for those things. So it's scanning for text, it's trying to make it a searchable image, all of those kinds of ideas. So this might take a moment, but we'll see how we do. And then once we do that particular bit, you can see you can stop this at any time and you can come back to it. There's check marks for we added document descriptions, we set the opening options. Now it's recognizing text using OCR. So that's what's happening, is it's running through and trying to scan all of the text that it can see. And then we're going to look at a couple of other issues that come up as we do this. And this particular text is a really terrible example. It's actually one of those that I wouldn't suggest giving to your students because it has really strange formatting, and we're going to look at that really quickly. So is this document intended to be used as a fillable form? You would want to say no, because your students aren't adding their address or contact info into it or something. And then the reading language is English, once again. And then it's going to detect figures. So it's going to look for pictures, and then it's going to ask you to add alternate text. The issue with this document and the issue with this book is that every time there's a page number, it thinks there's an image there. So I could put page 137, and I could do that for each one. And then when I go to page 2, this is why we crop, is so that there's not some image here that it thinks is appearing when it's really not. I could put a decorative figure for that and just sort of keep moving through the document. But unfortunately, with this particular book, I would have to do that for every single image that appears. So this whole bit at the bottom of the screen, I can say decorative. For our purposes now, I'm just going to push through and ignore the rest of these. Some of these are actual screenshots of things, so you would want to describe the alternate text for the reader. This is an example where the text isn't really visible here, so there's some work you would have to do to fix that. And I know this all sounds really scary, but it's also a good check to make sure, like, is this something I should even use in the first place? Because are students going to be able to use this document at all if they have impairments at all? When I hit start checking, it's going to do the full accessibility check. And so this is where I can go through this document and I can look at a couple of issues with the document itself. So it's not sure about the logical reading order. It needs a manual check. There's not much you could do if you were to use this. One thing about the reading order of this document is it's got the article here, and then it's got a response article below, and that appears on every page. So this top area is the actual article, and then the bottom area is some other article on the same page. So if I were to use this with my students, I would literally not want to use this with students because it creates these kinds of problems. The logical reading order, it's just not good enough. So I'm gonna pass it because I'm doing the best I can in that case, but even then I would want to rethink whether I use this document or not. With the alternate text, it's going to show all of those times that I skipped through and didn't tell it what to do. So that's not good. And then other elements of alternate text, and that's just from the scan. That's because we didn't crop those pages, so it thinks that there's an image there that isn't actually there. The other thing to think about is that there's an issue with headers in this document because there's a weird header at the top of the page. If I were to try to address this particular issue, I can right-click and I can explain. And what that's going to do is it's going to run to help at Adobe, and it's going to help us to identify what do we actually need to do. Looks like we need to correct table tags, and we need to start doing a more complicated procedure. So once again, do I want to use this document or do I not? What kind of time do I have to invest into adjusting the tags for the document? And then the same thing with the nesting. I can explain that rule and we can start to look at other options there. So I'm hoping that this gives you a sense. Once you save this document, at least this will be a better document than it originally was. But the goal is to make sure that you can choose a document that your students can use and use well.